Hello everyone, welcome to another video. In this video, I want to do a full run through of the poem Remains. That over there is me clearing up my house, which I still haven't finished. So please ignore the mess. Okay, so the poem Remains. Let's begin with AO3. Let's begin with context. The crux, the core of the context for Remains is PTSD. PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. Now you hear that a lot. That term gets thrown around a heck of a lot when it comes to poetry, especially the conflict poetry. But what does it actually involve? PTSD is when you almost become numb to violence. You become numb to emotions. You become numb to almost anything around you. There's an account of a soldier, a soldier in the war who came back and said that because he'd been in danger so much, he almost assumed that any sound, any bang, anybody walking too close to him was danger. So he would overreact because his body had been accustomed to the idea that sounds, bangs, people nearby are dangerous. So when he came back, he brought that with him. And furthermore, he spoke about how he became numb and he couldn't get over it, and he couldn't sleep at night, and he had thoughts about the war and what he didn't do, and how he let his soldiers die and how he let his friends die. Now this is all PTSD. In a nutshell, is when you've left the war but you can't get over the war and you're being affected in your daily routine by the war. Now that was the context. Let's switch and go over the play. Let's go over the poem. Okay, so now that we've been off the context, let's go over the poem. The poem Remains begins with, on another occasion. On another occasion implies what? It implies that they've been there before. They've done this before. We get sent out. This is a group of soldiers to tackle looters raiding a bank. So some men have robbed a bank and these soldiers have been tasked with going to catch them. Now the language is very colloquial. Colloquial is a language device. This is when you write in a very informal manner. And it carries on. It says, and one of them legs it up the road. Legs it, again, is colloquial language, which means that people are running away. Now the next part's important. It says probably armed, possibly not. The language is informal, yes, but it shows you how the soldiers have not bothered to check whether the men are carrying a gun. Well, myself and somebody else and somebody else. These soldiers are not close. They don't know each other's names. They are just numbers. They're just men who are put together. Are all of the same mind. They all think the same. So all three of us open fire. Now let's pause. There's a man running away from them, not running to them. This man is not armed. Yet they don't know one of them shoots him, but all three of them shoot. Three of a kind, all letting fly. Let's pause there. But just digest that in the first two stanzas, you've got a man who's running away with his back to the soldiers, getting shot at by three soldiers. And I swear, I see every round as it rips through his life. And the word ripped is very violent. It shows you how they shot him and they shot to kill. And it rips through his life. It goes straight through him. I see broad daylight on the other side. And that again emphasizes the bullets left holes that you can literally see straight through this man. They didn't shoot to kind of control him. They shot to kill him. So we've hit this looter a dozen times. Again with the colloquial language. They just killed this man. But again, guys, they promote the colloquial language, which reinforces the idea that they don't care, they're not bothered. And he's there on the ground, sort of inside out. They didn't even bother to check. He's just there, guts hanging out. Pain itself, the image of agony. Now this metaphor reinforces the idea that if you want to define pain, if you want to see what pain looks like, then look no further than this body on the floor. But they don't care. Look at the language. One of my mates goes by and tosses his guts back into his body. Tosses. Against colloquial language. Not placed, not moved, but tosses. You toss rubbish across the room. You don't toss guts back into a body. But it shows the mentality of a soldier, that they do not care for their victims. And then he's carted off in the back of a lorry. Remains, rubbish. When you put your bins out and they put in the back of a lorry, this is exactly what they did to this dead body. They put the body into the back of a lorry. Now this is where the poem takes a turning point. This is where it shifts. End of story, except not really. At this point in the poem, the tone shifts, the mood shifts. It goes from being very nonchalant, very relaxed, to being very, very serious. Something is about to happen. Something is about to occur, but we're not fully sure what. His blood shadow stays on the street. The shadow of his blood stays on the street. He's haunting these men. He's haunting the soldiers. And out on patrol, I walk over it week after week. They don't walk around it, they walk straight over it. No respect for the blood, no respect for the body, no respect for for the dead person. And then I'm home on leave. That's the end of the first part of the poem. Now what happens when he goes home? But I blink and he bursts again through the doors of the bank. I sleep and he's probably armed, possibly not. And I dream and he's torn apart by a dozen rounds. Those 3 words, blink, dream and sleep. They are your words that link to PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. The soldier is not physically suffering. His arm isn't hurting, his head isn't hurting, but his mind is hurting. His mind is being tortured. He can't sleep, he can't rest, he can't be at peace. Now this is your link to PTSD. This soldier is suffering for what he's done. At the time, he didn't realize, but now he's suffering. And the drink and the drugs don't work. And the drink and the drugs won't flush him out. He's tried. He's taken drugs, he's taken drink, but it's not working. That's what he's using to cope. And it only gets worse. He's here in my head when I close my eyes, dug in behind enemy lines, dug in behind the lines. It's like a battle. This man, this memory is deeply entrenched in his head. It's dug, it's hidden. He can't see it. Is it over here? Is it over there? Is it over there? He doesn't know where the problem is, but he knows that his mind's being affected. And this is what caused a lot of soldiers to eventually commit suicide, because they couldn't get to the bottom of their problems. He's nailed to the knuckles here and now, his bloody life in my bloody hands. This man who he killed all those miles away in the distant land, he's traveled with him, not physically, but in his mind. He's here in his bloody hands. He can picture what he's done. He can't get over it. Now that's the poem Remains. Now a good comparison with Remains is War Photographer, because they both suffer in a conflict. Now that was a brief, well not a brief, but that was a walkthrough of the entire poem. Look at PTSD for your context. Structurally, look at the lines where it says end of story except not really, because that's the shift. And then you have the language which I spoke about as we went through the poems. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe. Please follow me on Instagram, Mr. Eveything English.